Hello. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the panel discussion on acceptance in diverse communities. My name is Andreas, and I will be the moderator of this panel. I am an active member at DVH Outside, the LGBT organization of Delft, and I'm one of the organizers of the LGBT plus introduction group here in Delft. First, I would like to thank DVH Outside, the Coming Out Day Committee, TU Delft, X, and to you for organizing this panel. Now, let me first introduce the panel members. First up, we have Rocher, who is the editor-in-chief of Expresso and an all-round activist fighting for a better world. Welcome, Rocher. Then we have Charles. Charles is an international master's student from China studying at TU Delft. Welcome. And lastly, we have Anusha. Anusha was studying at TU Delft and is now a consultant in Delft. Now we'll have each panel member briefly discuss their coming out story. Rocher, would you like to start?
Of course. Thank you, Andrea. Like I said, my name is Rocher. I came out about 12 years ago. I was 16 back then, feels like such a long time ago. I first came out as bisexual, even though I knew I only was attracted to men, but I was really in such a struggle with myself and with the world that I thought having the first step as coming out as bisexual would be easier because of heteronormativity, and that as a man you should be at least attracted to women. That's what I thought. A year later, I came out as gay. And now I know that coming out as bisexual, even though you're not bisexual, only contributes to the erasure of bisexual people. So that was a mistake back then. I didn't know it like that back then. And my coming out has been a little bit of a bumpy ride because I was such in a struggle, like I said, with myself, self-acceptance. And I thought that would be the ending of it, to say it like that, but that was actually the beginning, because after coming out, the journey to self-acceptance and to your place in the world actually just starts. So that's a bit my coming out in a very short story.
Thank you for sharing. Charles, would you like to share next?
Yeah. Strictly speaking, I'm not like 100% out, since I still haven't told my parents, but I think it's still very interesting to share my own experience, very unique experience. So we can look at coming out in like three phases. First, you realize your sexuality. For me, that was around third or fourth grade, actually. I realized I was gay, and it was, to my surprise right now, back then I was actually really chill about it. I was actually quite in a relief, because in Chinese society, as a straight man, you kind of expected to contribute more in a marriage. So like fourth grade me was like, oh yeah, I don't need to do all that. And then we enter the second step, which is tell somebody about it, tell people about your sexuality, and have the follow-up question. As I told you, I didn't choose to tell my parents because back in the days when by the way, I grew up in China for 22 years. And for these 22 years, of course, I am heavily financially and also in all the other aspects relying on my parents. And I already get the vibe from them that they're not going to be extremely supportive about it. So yeah, I made my own decision. I didn't choose to tell them, but I did in various stage of my study and my life, I choose a few of my really close friends, and I told them my sexuality. And for most of them, they are really accepting, to my surprise. And this gay thing actually become a sort of like a bonding between me and my friends, and our friendship get to grow deeper, and we get to enter a new experience. I get to enter a new experience with them, and I think I also agree with Roger just said. The third stage after the third stage of coming out is actually after coming out, where you get to start your self-acceptance journey and live with your sexuality. For me personally, I learned, or I just start to live with my queerness by doing a lot of things. For example, the most obvious thing is that I moved to the Netherlands right now, because I think for the queer people, the Netherlands is a really accepting country, and I really like the atmosphere here. And more than that, I also really get to embrace the queer culture. As I said earlier, I said I was in quite a relief when I realized my sexuality because of the financial aspect of it. But later on in my life, I realized it was more a cultural thing for me. I really get to dive deep into the queer culture, watch a lot of queer film, and get to know a lot of amazing artists as well. And more importantly, throughout all this cultural activity and events, I get to meet a lot of like-minded friends who also went through really similar experience as me, and I became like really close and lifelong friend with them, which is, I would say, one of the biggest benefits of coming out for me. So yeah, that's basically my coming out story.
Okay, thank you very much for sharing. Anusha, you're up next.
Okay. So I just want to say, like, it's kind of weird that I'm here, like, talking about my coming out story. I feel like being on this is also a part of coming out. I feel like I still am, and because coming out is not just like one conversation that you have with your friend, right? It keeps happening and happening and happening. So by doing this panel thing online today, it's also coming out because I am indirectly having a conversation with quite some people, because I did post this on my Instagram. So it's like it's still happening. That's all. That's what I want to say. That it's like a process. But if I had to actually think about when I first came out, to introduce, so I'm a bisexual person, and mostly straight presenting, because I've had a boyfriend for a really long time, hopefully a lot longer also in the future. But when I was maybe 13 and hormonal like everybody, I think I did feel some attraction towards women, and it was a bit weird because amongst friends and in school you talk about, oh, I have a crush on this boy and that boy, and I did have crushes on boys, but I also had crushes on girls, and this was always like, you know, this little secret that you carried with you, this little part that you just don't talk about as openly. But like the first time I did experiment, or, you know, have an encounter with a girl, like that in itself felt a little bit like coming out, because it's different, right? Like when you grow up, everyone's always making these jokes about being gay, you know, like girlfriends, like they're always like, oh yeah, I love you so much, we should just get married. I'm sure like people would have experienced that. So when you're there like making jokes like, oh yeah, you should be my girlfriend, I hate boys, like I think I'm just gonna date girls from now on. At some point I started to question, when I was making those jokes, if I really meant it. with any of my girlfriends. So this was also a process. And finally, when I entered university, I met a girl, and it was really interesting because we were still making these kinds of, and now when I look back at it, I think these jokes are low-key homophobic. I met this girl in college, and then she just point blank like asked me like, so you really are attracted to women, right? Because when we used to discuss, oh, I think she's so beautiful and she's so hot and everything, she was just like, yeah, I don't think, it's just like a joke for you, or you're just saying it. And then I think that was like the first time I admitted also to somebody that, yeah, I actually do like girls as well. And then it was with her that I first talked about the term bisexual. So I think that's like a really key moment in my coming out story. And once I realized that, I also knew I had to come out to my boyfriend, who was thankfully really supportive in his own way. So yeah, and also supportive with my exploration of my bisexuality as the years went by, because it's a bit weird. Like I, just like Charles, I also have not come out to my parents, and I don't think I will. I think in India there's a lot of closeting even for straight people. Like you have to closet your relationships. Anyway, even if you have even that I had a boyfriend, I had to keep that closeted for a long time. So the question of coming out to my parents is, I mean, it's moot. I don't think I ever will unless I absolutely need to. So yeah, but even though I am straight presenting, it's in every little step. Like when I moved to the Netherlands, and I saw in the introduction program for master students that there was an introduction talk with our local LGBT community. In that little moment, I was also coming out to myself when I said, okay, I'm going to go attend this meeting with these people, and then I'm going to go talk to these people. So I feel like every single moment has been me coming out. Then after that, when I was volunteering as a bartender at the LGBT society, some of my classmates were like, what are you doing at the gay bar? Because they know about my boyfriend, right? So they're like, oh yeah, what are you doing at the gay bar? There's nothing wrong with you, right? So these are also like moments in your life that you have to keep coming out, which I'm sure like everyone who is queer has gone through this. But yeah, I think like even the other day I had to come out to my coworker because I was explaining why I'm involved with Outside and DWH. So yeah, that's basically it for me.
Thank you very much for sharing. Now, before we continue, I'd like to address some things that I forgot to say at the start. This panel is organized for Coming Out Day, which every year takes place on October 11th, to encourage LGBT liberation and create awareness of our experiences, as homophobia thrives in an atmosphere of silence and ignorance, and we want to break that atmosphere. One of the activities, as I said, of the Coming Out Day is this panel, which we created to create awareness, because you see, most of Dutch society is already aware of the experiences of coming out and being gay for the Dutch white cis male. However, there's a world out there of people from other cultures or from minorities, and this can give unique twists to their LGBT plus experience. So this year we're organizing this panel in which persons from different backgrounds will tell their coming out experience and how they have shaped them. So that is sort of the introduction now that you all have introduced ourselves. Now maybe you could tell us similarities or differences you heard between your stories. For example, I heard from both Charles and Anusha that you're not out to your parents. Rocher, how is that for you?
I'm actually out to my parents, to my family, to everyone, but I came out when I came out, I first came out to my parents. I think I came out first, like before that to my sister, but I immediately told my parents. I think the only person who did not know in the beginning was my grandmother. She was told 2 years later, also because of cultural sensitivity. Because I'm bi-ethnic, my mother is white and my father is from Suriname. So my grandmother, from my father's side, she is in a way sort of traditional in that sense. So it was she wasn't told until I was 18. But the funny part is when my father finally told her, she kind of cried because it's still a big thing, I think. But she told him that it couldn't be that bad because Lucas from GTST, which was a gay character in a Dutch soap drama, is also gay. And she made that reference. So I think that's really cool because that really shows that representation of our community in mainstream spaces and popular media is so important because that made she had a reference point for me being gay, and I think that made it easier. But yeah, both my parents and I think all of my family members know, especially now 12 years later. I don't like it's one of my activist points, and everywhere I go on social media, my job, whatever, I'm quite active, and I don't have a problem with people telling that I'm gay and that I'm attracted to men.
That's super interesting that you actually bring up your grandma, accepting an example from media, and it gives me a lot of hope actually because I've never heard this example, and also because my impression of my family is that they're always like, yeah, all this happens in like movies and Western things, but we're not going to accept that. But this is really hopeful. Yeah.
But like from your story, I think can I assume that you're from India?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't there a beginning of this year that there was a Bollywood movie that came out of two gay men, and they were the main characters, and their love story was the main was the main storyline. It was a Bollywood movie, I think. So I think Bollywood is also making steps in that way. So I think that's really like if that gives you hope, I think it gives all of us hope that especially the representation of our community, especially not being white and having the intersection of being LGBT plus or queer with um, being of color, being black, having a different cultural background than what the norm is or religious sensitivity. I think those intersections also being shown in films, movies, popular media is really important for our representation.
Yeah, 100%. About that, I do think there are indie filmmakers trying to broach the subject, which is probably what you're talking about. Yeah, although there's like I'm gonna bring this example right in Bollywood movies, and I'm talking mainstream stuff because I'm not sure, but I think the one you're talking about is an indie movie. In even in mainstream Bollywood movies and stuff, there's dating, there's heterosexual couples falling in love, even kisses, okay, which is like a big thing for Bollywood, by the way, to show. Even those things are not widely accepted by all families, which is why I mean, but you're gonna win some and you're gonna lose some, which is why like when I heard that your grandma actually was like, okay, she was accepting things that were shown to her in media. That's like a good example because I have only seen, I think, people who are super attached to their culture that think, oh yeah, this can happen in movies, but this is not going to happen to us in real life, you know. But it's yeah.
Okay, Charles, can you maybe elaborate a bit on how you would think it would be perceived in your family or friend groups? How would, for example, examples in movies of gay couples, how would people react to that?
Yeah, I think if we have a lot of representation on the media in China, that would definitely be like a really positive thing. But the special situation in China is that like the representation are really like, how to say, oppressed or suppressed. Yeah, they got censored a lot of time, and so a lot of time people don't necessarily have the chance to really get to know our group through the media. And recently on social media, there's also this backlashing thing, like a homophobic wave about gay people's image and their sexual behavior and stuff. And for me personally, I just feel it's just very sad we don't have that representation, positive representation in the media.
Okay.
Do you feel safer, so to speak, now that you're here?
Basically, I think I never really was worried about being like physically attacked back in China for being gay or stuff. But I think here I feel a little bit more than a little bit actually. I feel mentally more free because I can sometimes, like, especially when I first came here, I just have this term in my mind. I was like, I can just gay bomb everyone here and everyone's just totally okay with it. So, like, I can just tell anyone at the party and they were like, yeah, it's no big deal, you know. And I think that's pretty cool actually. But I don't think I can do that in China. You know.
Okay. What do you, all of you, think was what part of your coming out do you think you were least prepared for? Could it be the support or the lack thereof that you experienced from people, or could it be how hard it was for yourself to come to terms with who you are?
I think if I can answer that question, I think what I said earlier, I think the part I was the least prepared for was that it was the start of the journey and not the ending of it. Because you're coming out, it's kind of like it's an internal process, and I think most people who come out kind of finish that process, but it's more of a part like you have coming out, but somebody once told me the concept of coming into yourself, of self acceptance, and I think the start of that is when you come out, because we have a whole community, we have the whole world. I mean, we have just accepted ourselves, and then we have to move in a world which marginalizes us, which makes us feel unsafe. Still, like in 2020, we still had gay bashing on the street. LGBT students in schools let us know that there is a lack of good representation or good sexual education. There's so much for us to worry about in this world that I think I was the least prepared for that, because I've come to terms with myself, and then I'm like, holy shit, I have the whole world like to navigate. I have to navigate in this. I have to think about holding some other guy's hand on the street when I want to show affection. I first have to look over my shoulder to see if I'm not gonna get like bashed in the head or something. You know, that's the world we live in, and that's the thing we need to change. But I think that's the part I was the least prepared for.
Yeah, I think for me it was it was the internal questioning. It's like, okay, I know that I am bisexual, but I was not ready for the fact that because I was straight presenting, that despite that I would still have a lot of internal conflict or a lot of questions where I'm like, oh, what does this mean for me? Oh, does this mean that I'm so every time I felt any sort of attraction towards a woman, it would like bring on a whole line of internal questions. Does this mean I like women more than men? because those are the sort of binaries that we think in. Like, even though I don't want to think in them, that's just the way you start thinking. Oh, do you have a preference for one over the other? Does this actually mean that maybe I'm not as into men as I think I am? So this is something I wasn't prepared for, and it's also a bit silly when I think about it, because I mean, you read all these articles saying that, yeah, it doesn't matter. It just means you're attracted to both and you can choose. And I know in my heart of hearts, I've read all the literature, spoken to friends. I follow activism Instagrams, but still there's this question. And it's disappointing to myself. So that's something that I think I was not prepared for. Like, still thinking within binaries.
I think in my case, what I'm least supported was the sort of community presence in the educational system, or or in the society as a whole. For example, I started actually watching Glee myself, like back in middle school. But yeah, I get to watch it at home. Like, I enjoyed it so much. But when I actually grab my school bag and go to school, there's no other gay kids or queer kids around me actually, and I have to be really strategic about choosing who I'm going to come out to, which it's always like a sort of me against the world kind of feeling, and it's definitely not healthy for your coming out process. And I think if they were this kind of group, like Gay Student Association back in China, then it would have helped me a bit more.
So it's super interesting that you bring this up. I've also heard people who have come out of the closet choose to stay within the closet at certain times, just like you described. Do you think that I mean, there's always people who are like, yeah, you don't need to flaunt your sexuality about everything. Not everything is about, sexuality.
It isn't. No, just
like,
kidding. Keep going.
yeah, but you know what I'm trying to say, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So there's moments, and how do you decide when and who?
I think it's sort of like instinct. Like some people, like you share a lot of common interest with them. Like, maybe they also watch a lot of like English television show, or maybe they're in the same let's say association with you, or maybe they're in the same production of a High School Musical with you, and then oh, they're like queer friendly. Yeah, that sort of things, which I find it so funny because like in my university, in my bachelor, I joined like this musical club. Actually, not even for the sake of seeking community. It's just looking for a way to spend my time and looking for a way to spend my time and enjoy myself a little bit. But then when I actually joined the group, then I realized I think 80-90% of the guys there are like gay. My point being that a lot of things culturally they are queer coded, and for gay people, like it's sort of like we have it in our mind, but we're hitting it from the gay straight people. Like, oh, we see like he like this and that, so he might be gay or gay friendly. So that's what I find really interesting, and how I kind of choose how to tell people or not to tell people.
Then how about what did you learn from your coming out story? What would you be able to pinpoint that you would say, oh, this is something that I did not have to worry about, or that I should have worried about, or that I don't know, that I could have done different, or Is there anything that you can think about? For example, were you very afraid of coming out to some specific people that ended up not being a problem at all, or the opposite?
Yeah, I think I think I would just, if I could do anything differently, I would just tell myself, because it gave me like a lot of angst, like not knowing what the hell was happening with me, why I was like having like these secrets, and whether I was just, being a slut or something, like just all the time being attracted to all of these people. I think if I could tell myself anything, I would just say, don't try so hard to put a label on yourself, because at the time, and I didn't, I don't know how, maybe, yeah, when I was growing up, my access to the internet was still a little bit more limited. I just never stumbled upon this word, bisexual, and it was also not something that we spoke about so much in high school. So yes, I think that like left me a bit restless. But if I could tell my 14, 15-year-old self something, I'd just be like, yeah, so what if you don't know the word for it? It's fine, right? You're gonna grow up and figure it out. So yeah, I think that's what I learned from it.
I think what I learned from it's a bit different, but the whole process of coming out of the closet and then navigating through the world is that I learned I deserve a spot in this world. There is a space reserved in this world for me, for all of us. Whatever people tell us, we deserve to be here. We have a right to be here. We are people, like the rest of like cisgender people, heterosexual people, whatever. We deserve to be here, and I think that's one of the things I learned, because you get so much like the internalized hatred, the internalized shame, the hatred and shame from the outside world. It's really, I think a lot of us have to navigate through, especially with the concept of coming out. With like we had coming out day, but it sounds so simple, but it's everything but simple, because we have to come in, we have to come out, we have to come out again and again and again, because of the norm that cisgender is the thing that's it's normal, and everything that it's not is supposed to be abnormal, that heterosexuality is supposed to be the normal thing, and everything that is not is abnormal. And especially mental health problems among LGBT kids, there's a lot of illnesses that come about that come from it. Like we get taught, like sometimes explicitly, sometimes implicitly, that we should not be here, that we're abnormal, but we're not. And that's the thing I learned the most. And I think that's the thing I want to tell to myself, my 16-year-old self. And that's what everything I want to say, like to everybody out there watching. We deserve to be here. You deserve to be here. And that's the thing I think we have to learn and have to internalize. Like we deserve love, we deserve acceptance. We have to demand it, because part of my language, fuck that world who tells us we're not supposed to be here.
Yeah. Yeah. Kudos to that.
I think in my experience of coming out, I also learned that how to really find your community and really find your own voice, which I already mentioned before. But I think I just realized, I think one of the questions was also about what could have you done better, like what kind of mistake or something in my coming out. And that really triggers me like to something else. Like it's not even something like I could have done better, but it's kind of like a struggle a little bit in the back of my mind. It was about my grandparent actually, because yeah, my grandparents obviously like didn't know I'm gay, and currently I still don't even have the plan to tell them actually I'm gay and not going to marry a woman like they wishes and like they wish and this sort of things. But on the other hand, I somehow feel like in this question, in this struggle, I am standing in between like two kind of culture. Uh, one of the culture being the Chinese culture, not only traditionally heterosexual, dominantly heterosexual, but also like we don't necessarily encourage you to tell the truth at all. Like we're encouraged to not to say anything. Like I don't know if someone watched the movie The Farewell. It was about Chinese grandma got diagnosed with cancer, and the whole Chinese family covering up the whole thing from her. Actually, that's just it's a really cultural thing, and it happens in China like millions times a day, and so obviously I from my perspective, no matter what kind of reason, I don't want to tell them, of course, like out of any reason. But on the other hand, I talk to them every week on the video call, and every video call, they were just telling me, like, Charles, come back to China after your study and find a wife here, and we're waiting for the grandchildren and stuff. Which might sound a little bit crazy for you guys, especially like Western audience of the panel, but that's just how they express their love and their ideology, and it's culturally is not necessarily like a wrong any fault from them. So every time I hear from them stuff like that, that really kind of like breaks me a little bit because I don't see any solution out of this thing, and yeah, it's just kind of tough for me.
Does it feel a bit like you're, living a double life? Like you can be a different person, but to them you need to be this same person.
Yeah, because for me, I really want to tell them truth, but I just don't think in the recent 5 years it's gonna be a good moment to tell them. But then on the other hand, they're my grandparents, and to be honest, like let's be real, like they don't have tons of time in the world in this life already, and yeah, that yeah, it's a bit sad. I don't know how to process that a little bit.
Yeah, because they're also the kind of people that you don't want to say, yeah, fuck you, I'm gonna live my truth, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You don't want to do that.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, all my no matter my grandparents or my parents, they love me, and yeah, they definitely love me, and I want to love them back in the same way, in my own way. But my own way means that telling the truth, and it's gonna be a tough truth for them.
Yeah.
And I think that's also a problem of the whole concept of coming out. Like you said, Anusha, like everybody wants to live that truth. I mean, keeping secrets, having a double life is literally can literally make us sick mentally and then physically. But it's not that simple. We have so many factors to think about, especially as queer people of color and black queer people and trans people of color and black trans people, that we have cultural and religious intersections to keep account. Like what your story is about, what Charles' story is about. It's not that simple of, yeah, let's just come out and fuck the world and I'm just gonna live my truth. It's not that simple. And I think that's also the evolution we're making with whole the coming out day, that we're more, like the title says, it's not black and white. It's not coming out of the closet and it's done. We have a lot of things to think about, and especially as a community, we need to think about each other and not, pardon me, but let the cis gays rule, like the white cis gays, because that they're all but they're always seen as the front point of our community, but it's not that. It's not it, you know. And I think the moment we acknowledge that we have such a diverse community, that we can, like, hopefully one day we can have a coming out day and also a coming in day, you know, that we can come in and preach self-acceptance and acknowledge the struggles some of us have by not feeling comfortable enough to be out and proud. Because why can't you be in and proud? Like,
Yeah.
So kind of like that, yeah.
Yeah. Going back to the question where you also like, yeah, this is one of those things that I was not prepared for. That this simple thing, who you like and what gender or sex, or this little bit that you think is so personal to you, it is not. I mean, it's not treated as something that's personal to you. It becomes public property. And that's something that you just keep realizing as the day goes on. It's not like, oh yeah, I choose to like this person. It's not that simple. It's public property. It's political. Everyone decides to have an opinion on this. And even more so, as the number of intersections, as you put it, Roche, as the number of intersections grow, the more public your personal coming out or your personal sexuality becomes. And I think that's something that queer kids, I mean, it's not the most positive thing to say, but it's something that we need to figure out how to prep them for. To be protective of the fact that it is personal, but also acknowledge that, this becomes public debate, and to mentally prepare themselves for a slightly more tiring discourse around their lives.
Yeah, because it's like you said, like what you say makes me think, because it's public debate, but it's not even our choice. We get politicized. Like others politicize us.
Yes.
Others debate about us. Others decide that we are abnormal, and then we have to deal with the world spitting us out. To put it like a bit melodramatic, but like what the hell? Like why? I mean, that's the whole point. That's the whole issue. The whole center point of our marginalization. Other people decided that we were abnormal, and then we have our own community deciding that some things, like our community deciding things for people within the community. So we need to stop that, and we need to give everybody their own choice. Like, we live in the Western world, and individualism is such a high preached thing here. Then if that's true, then respect each other's individual choices, and choices for individually not coming out but to come in. And because the whole question, like, why wouldn't you want to live out and proud, or why wouldn't you tell anybody? Like, why would you keep it a secret? The moment you ask those questions, you show that you do not understand.
Yeah.
I think, I think it's a really great discussion, and in my opinion, I think it's more about respecting everybody's individual choices. It's obviously, like the title suggested, it's not black and white. It's a really layered experience, and sometimes, like, it's only just you in the whole world can understand it, and you get to decide what kind of choices you're going to make. So no matter out and proud or in and proud, just make your own choices. And I think everybody should respect each other's personal choices like this.
Thank you. We'll now move to questions from the audience. You can send in questions on Facebook or on YouTube. We have already received a few, and we'll hopefully see them in the screen right here. I'll read it out as well. We have a question from Eva. Are you not afraid that people you are not out to will see this?
Eva, you're a mind reader. For me personally, I am, but that was a conscious decision. And that's also when Carlos asked me, do you want your whole name, your picture? Yes, this is a coming out step for me. This is me saying, okay, I don't care if you see it, even if I don't actively come and tell you, it's fine. Like, this is also part of coming out for me.
Yeah, for me, this question, I'm not afraid to answer this question, but I already suggested that I'm kind of living on a double world, and the other side of the world is like blocked. like we actually, like in Chinese mainland, we don't have access to YouTube and Instagram anyway. So and living here, I think I set my standard on record straight, and I live by default like out. I never try to like deliberately hide it anymore. Of course, it's not like I verbally telling everyone like, oh, I'm gay, but yeah, it's okay. If they see it, they see it. It's free promo.
Let's see. I think we have a question for Rocher. How often and where are you afraid of showing affection in public in the Netherlands?
Honestly, if I'm very honest also to myself, I think everywhere and nowhere. Because it's become second nature to doubt it, to question it, to look over your shoulder. I think a couple of years ago I was dating this guy, and I think at the end of the date he gave me a kiss in public, or I was like debating it in my mind, and it became such a thing. And then I had this internal monologue, like very dramatic, like very movie like. That I thought to myself, how can I fight for a better world? How can I preach acceptance to other people? Or how can I preach to stand up for yourself and to bring fire to the world and to just to live your truth, whatever your truth may be, if I'm not living my own truth? So then I actively on the next date held his hand, gave him a kiss in public, like on the square in front of Amsterdam Central Station. Like, I mean, but it's still going to be a thing. I think on every date I'm going to wonder if it's going to be a safe space for LGBT people or not, and if I'm going to do it or not, because like I'm kind of not afraid. I'm also afraid at the same time, because I go into this mode in my head that I'm like, you know what, bring it on, I'm ready to fight. But it's like the whole, like if you think about it, getting in this state of mind ready to fight is the whole problem. It's a symptom of the problem that I've internalized, but it's after 12 years, it's really hard to get rid of that, especially like once every couple of months we get the news that like a gay person has been bashed on the street or experienced harassment or something. So so yeah, complicated answer, but I don't want to feel it. The fear, it's a second nature that it comes up, but I actively combat it. And I had this one time in the train where I think I came back from Amsterdam. I was doing whatever it was the evening, and I saw two men sitting next to each other and holding hands, just being sweet to each other. It was such a good thing to see that I was immediately like in this fighting mode to be like, if anybody gives them shit, like hold my purse, hold my earrings, like you know, somebody hold me. I'm gonna whoop some ass, to put it like that, because like I'm very protective of our community, and so it's sorry, Philippe, it's a very complicated answer. But yeah, I think it's an internalized thing, and I need to get rid of it. But I also think the world needs to get rid of it and needs to let us be.
It must also be stressful always having that fight, because you're always on edge. Like every time you have to go through that. Like
I drink a lot of chamomile tea to relax and I meditate, but sometimes it's still not enough.
that is a healthy way to deal with it. You know?
That is true. That is definitely true. And also a lot of chocolate, but we're not going to talk about that.
How have you, maybe Charles or Anusha, experienced this in Delft in particular?
I didn't have to experience that, so.
I personally also don't have first-hand experience.
Okay, but it's a short question.
Sadly.
The next question from Melanie. What would be your wishes for your Delft environment to improve in regards of the topics today?
Okay, so I was thinking of something with respect to at least my university environment. This can probably be extended, I don't know. Delft is, thanks to its all of its universities and stuff, it's super international. It gets a super international crowd. They market it also as a really international, diverse place. But because of that, we also have a lot of other communities, and the communities that some people come from they don't normalize the queer community the way it has been normalized in Dutch society, which is fine. I mean, you move abroad, you learn and stuff, but I also think it's a great chance to conduct some kind of sensitization education for these other communities, because I have firsthand experienced this, that some people from my Indian community felt comfortable saying homophobic things to me, because that's what they were used to, and they were saying it to another Indian person. But I wonder if we worked with, I don't know, the university or like the other student associations to bring some kind of sensitization workshops. It would help that, and also in general for people to be better allies, because being normalizing queer people is not just I know trans people exist and I'm fine, but as long as they're not in my face, that's also not normalization. And that's also something you see from people who make fun of the pronoun discussion, right? Who people who are like, oh, how many sexualities are they going to come up with? This is talk that we don't have time for in 2020. So if I had to think about ways to improve this the environment, I think it would be nice to have sensitization education and ways to be better allies, education in that respect, basically.
Maybe Rocher, I'm not exactly sure where you live, but probably not in Delft. How is this in your place where you live?
I live in Rotterdam, so come to think of it, I don't think I've actually ever, outside of LGBT spaces, shown affection in that way. Or if I look at Rotterdam in general, like LGBT space, from today, also like from the coming out day on, the city of Rotterdam normally on important LGBT days flags the rainbow flag, and from this year on, they decided to flag the progress flag, including the trans colors and the people and like the POC BIPOC colors. So with the 5 extra colors, that's really cool. And I think they're doing their best regarding spaces like LGBT environment, but I think everywhere we can have a lot of improvement. The fun part is though funny part is that there's less, well, in the media, less cases about people getting beat up in Rotterdam than Amsterdam. Like, what happened to gay capital, y'all? But yeah, but that's the truth, right? But yeah, I think everywhere environments can be improved. But I'm not complaining about Rotterdam. I know they're doing their best, and we have a lot of organizations working to make it a better space.
Okay. We have a last question. What are your opinions on the LGBTQ plus community being a bit toxic sometimes and very centered around cis gay white men? And have you ever felt not comfortable maybe in your own community because of this? Who would like to start?
Maybe we can just go around the table. So with Rocher and then Charles and then.
I can talk a lot about this, but let me just keep it short and simple. Yes, the community can be very toxic. There is racism in our community, especially when we look at gay culture specifically and the grinder culture with the no femmes, no fats, no Asians, no blacks. That's the thing. So that's really a problem. And the whole part, because aside of being gay, cis white men have no other, like when you look at those characteristics, no other intersection of discrimination. So the moment they get emancipated, to say it like that, they think everything's done. But everybody relates to white cis gay men as the community, so they make the assumption we don't need any emancipation, and they decide for us what happens. Especially, I talked about the Progress Pride flag, like in my environment and close contacts and looking at the local communities, it is most of the time the cis gay white men who hate that flag, who think the flag is already inclusive enough. But if the flag is already inclusive enough, the community is already inclusive enough, why is there still racism? Why is there still transphobia? So that's the whole thing. But that's a discussion for another day. But yes, I have felt not comfortable in my own community because of the color of my skin.
Yeah, I share the same experience. I also have a lot of moments in the community, in my own community, that I don't necessarily feel comfortable. For example, for my body or my race or anything like that. And I think, yeah, I agree with Roche. Like, the fight is not over. You know, it's just you cannot really say like, oh, we've already made it. Like Stonewall is already like 50. Like a lot of years ago, we're already here and we can already enjoy what we have right now. But it's just so not true. And there's a lot to be done still. And I think everyone, like especially cis gay white men, like they should step there something up, you know, and do something really.
Yeah. So yeah, I agree as well. I mean, I have to say, lucky and grateful to not have experienced overt racism. But there is something that I have noticed in conversation with cis gay white men that that basically sometimes they like to take the stand of, oh, I don't want to get political, which I find really funny, because your out and proudness and your whiteness and everything is now accepted because of a history of politics, and suddenly you want to not be political about the presence of white supremacist groups at Pride. I find this laughable at best and disgusting at worst. Step up, right? You can't not be political when you know you're done fighting, and then, oh, I don't want to be political anymore. Why do you still have problems? No, it doesn't work like that.
None of us are free until all of us are free.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, with that, I would like to end today's panel. Thank you very much, Roche, Anusha, and Charles, for participating. Thank you to the Coming Out Day Committee from DWH Outside, and of course, to Delft X and True You for helping us with the Coming Out Day activities. And of course, thank you all for watching. And remember, it's not black and white.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.